How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Brian and Ethan's Biathlon podcast. Don't worry about us sitting out before the Olympics. We ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of funny that you're not going to be here for all of February.
It's fine. I will be going somewhere for the Olympics, so maybe it's not. All right, everybody, we are back. We're now on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. We were a little bit late uploading the podcast last week because, I'll be honest, I completely forgot to upload it to the podcast platform. But if you follow us on YouTube, then you'll see our podcast up there every Tuesday evening or Wednesday morning, depending on however long it takes me to edit. Really depends on how much Ethan and I talk about. But yeah, go check us out. Brian and Ethan's Biathlon Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast. And then head over to the podcast website where you can leave us a 1-minute voice message. And if we like what you have to say, we'll even include it in the next episode. Ethan, Biathlon and Ruhpolding, what'd you think?
I thought it was some pretty exciting racing, I think, with some big names sitting out and a racetrack that wasn't super duper challenging. I think there's some interesting results and a lot of fun races.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy to see in the sprint race, the difference between first place and 60th place was literally only a minute and 50 seconds. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've ever seen that before. I mean, I feel like we're more accustomed to seeing the split between like first and 15th a minute and 50. Sometimes even first and third is a minute and 50. The fact that all 60 people in the men's sprint race, which made for a disaster in the pursuit, but it was just incredible to see the just how close everyone was. And yeah, the course isn't super technical. It's just more of a grind. Mm-hmm. And when you get to this super high level, like, people are fit. There's no one at the World Cup who's not just an incredible athlete. And so when you take all the technical aspects out of the course and it's just a grind on skis, yeah, we can see that people here they're very close. Mm-hmm. All right, let's dive right into it with our first shot. Campbell Wright from New Zealand, personal best, 25th in the sprint. The guy's only 19 years old, and he's absolutely hilarious. I know that there's been a couple interviews with him on some of the IBU, promotional stuff, and quite frankly, I think in those interviews he's a little bit nervous because his personality and his humor does not come across in those videos. Having met him personally last year at Junior World Championships, the guy is so funny, just so funny. So it really good to see him doing well on the World Cup. That was only his 8th World Cup start, and he comes in 25th, and it's just incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the British announcers on Eurovision were going crazy too when he crossed the line, but it's pretty awesome to see him. I mean, he's only 19 years old on the World Cup, getting top 30s, which is hard for just about everybody who's on the World Cup. And that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah. And that was, I think it's one of his first races he ever shot clean. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, his ski time, he must have had one of the better ski times as well. Okay, so he had the 64th fastest ski time, which I guess isn't great. But if you have a 64th fastest ski time, where he's literally only skiing a minute and 11 seconds fast or slower than Quentin Fillon-Maillet, which is pretty good if you're 60th place for ski time and you're only skiing a minute and 11 slower. And then yeah, with a clean shooting, he was able to jump ahead of a ton of people ahead of him who had some penalties and was able to get a really good result. And I think with that result, he should be qualified for the Olympics. I'm not really sure. I don't want to say that for sure because I don't know, but I do believe that he is one of the people kind of fighting for one of those wild card spots for the Olympics. So we might be seeing Campbell at the Olympics in Beijing in a couple weeks, which would be really exciting for a 19-year-old. I know Sean Doherty was 18 when he qualified for the Olympics for the U.S. team, but that's a little different when your nation has 4 start spots and you're really just racing people from your nation for those last spots. He's racing everyone, all the independents for the wild card, the so-called wild card spots. So if he's able to claim one of those spots and race at the Olympics, that'd be That'd be freaking huge for a 19-year-old. And the last thing we'll say about Campbell is he actually has American citizenship. So even though he's racing for New Zealand right now, he's got American citizenship. And yeah, I wonder what it would take to get him to race for us.
That'd be pretty cool.
All right, moving on. This missed shot is pretty obvious. Everything that happened in the men's relay, just complete chaos down on the lower end of the range. And really, it starts with the first shooting of the day. Norway had some issues in the first shooting, and they were able to hit all their targets. Alexander Field Anderson was able to hit his targets, but he used a lot of spare rounds. That dropped him back in the pack a little bit. Same with Pepe Femling from Sweden. And in the standing position on shooting number 2, Femling accidentally started cross-firing onto Anderson's target. Anderson was trying to alert the range official who, according to some reports, wasn't moving fast enough and was not, really understanding what the issue was. And there was just mass confusion. The Norwegians ended up having to do 2 penalty loops. And yeah, I guess it just left everyone confused, especially the people who are there in the moment didn't know what was going on or how it should be solved. But in general, or in at the end, the IBU ended up awarding Team Norway about a minute and 15 seconds time credit for the time that was spent on the range waiting for the range official, and then another 45 seconds for the penalty loops that Anderson ended up having to ski. So in total, they got a 2-minute time credit, and that bumped them up quite a bit in the standings, but you could see that they obviously weren't, they weren't like full gas as if they were fighting, for the medals the whole time. I'm wondering, Ethan, what's your opinion on crossfiring? Should there be a penalty for crossfiring, or is the fact that you're missing your target and you have to ski penalty loops penalty enough?
I feel like if you realize that you miss all your targets and you ski your penalty loops, that's probably enough for you to realize that you probably should pay a little more attention. I mean, if you're on the World Cup and you crossfire, obviously it's not ideal and it's kind of embarrassing, and having to ski 5 penalty loops on the World Cup is always kind of a shock. So I think having to ski your penalty loops is enough of a punishment for crossfiring.
Yeah, I think like one way to look at it is like, think of it just as Femling missed his target, but he just happened to miss by, so he happened to miss by so much that his bullet hit the target of another competitor. And, people always ask like, well, if someone else is shooting at your target, shouldn't you just take those free shots? And it's like, well, no, I don't think that's fair either, because then like you could, like, I guess you could collude.
Yeah.
Or you could like pay another team off and be like, hey, when we come in to shoot, you shoot at my target and help me hit these targets, and then I'll give you some prize money or something like that. So I think, no, like, yeah, you have to hit your own targets with your own bullets. And if some of them are on, the first target, that gets spoiled by another competitor accidentally shooting your target, and then the rest are on like a reset target, then, yeah, everyone's got to shoot their own target. All right, let's move on. Belarus. Holy smokes! Like, Belarus is kind of coming out of nowhere. I mean, the women last year had a really good season. With Alambakova, and then Hanna Sola started coming alive. But nowhere did I think that the Belarusian men were going to have a good season this year. Anton Samolsky, we really haven't talked about him too much this year, but that dude's on fire. And especially in like the last couple of races, it's like you can't watch the race without him being in the mix, which is pretty crazy. Currently, Smolsky's sitting 7th overall, and he doesn't have any wins yet, but he's got quite a few third place finishes this season, which has bumped him up to seventh place overall. 25 years old, and I think Smolsky and Alembakova are actually in a relationship together. So is that the new power couple in biathlon right now?
I mean, it's hard to find another one out there, I think.
Smolsky's not like he's shooting 85%, which I guess is like the World Cup standard right now. But his skiing is up. It's been climbing over the last couple of years, actually at a really consistent rate of about 2% per year. And he's currently skiing a little bit slower than the top 10 average, but a bit faster than the top 30, and quite a bit faster than the average biathlete. So yeah, he's really been improving his skiing over these last 4 years, and his shooting has always been actually pretty consistently around 85%. So it looks like it's just a matter of time, and these last couple of weeks, I think it's starting to become his time, because when you look at his progression chart on Real Biathlon, it's like every season he just starts getting up like higher and higher and higher. His first couple of years, he had some really good races in the top 30s, but then also some bad races in the 90s. And then pretty much from like 2020, he got more consistent in the 30s, and then from last season 2021, he was pretty consistently in like the 20 to 30 range, and now this season he's pretty consistently in the 10 to 20 range, with his last couple races all being in the top 10. So yeah, Anton Samilsky just leading the Belarusian team to even a podium in the relay this week. I kind of wish it was Barkonikov, because I have him on my relay or my fantasy team, but unfortunately that guy's back down on the IBU Cup now. But yeah, Belarus. Who saw Belarus coming in to become a biathlon powerhouse?
I know. I don't think anyone really predicted it. And in the men's relay, they were third against what looks like a pretty strong Russian team, pretty strong German team, who finished ahead of them. Italy's team was full force. France was probably just about as strong as they're going to get. And they beat Italy, France, Ukraine, Norway, Sweden, all these nations that are seated above them. And right now we talk about Smolsky, like he's kind of like their one guy, but that doesn't really seem to be the case. It seems like the other three men on the relay team are still having good results, skiing fast, shooting well, and keeping them in the races. And then as soon as they hand off to Smolsky, he kind of can gain some ground on just about anyone out there.
So I went back and looked up real quick. Daria Domracheva retired at the end of 2018. That's when Smolsky, his first season was the 2017-2018 season. Let me just double check, but I know that Alembakova was on the team with Domracheva because they won gold together in Pyeongchang. Hannah Sola, who's another one who's really crushing it for Belarus right now, her first season was 2015, but then she took a year off, a couple of years off. Maybe she was on the IBU Cup a little bit, but her first full season of the World Cup was in 2018. So it seems like this is the crew of young athletes who were there when Domracheva was starting to wind down her career. But and then when I say wind down her career, I mean she finished when she was on top. Like she was a powerhouse when she retired. Like she didn't sort of like fade into obscurity. She was on the top of her game when she retired. So I'm wondering if this is just a crew of young athletes who were just super inspired and just got a ton out of working with Domracheva as young athletes, and now we're just starting to see them sort of mature into being top level athletes. Because all these athletes, Sola, Alembakova, Domracheva, or sorry, not Domracheva, she's already retired. Sola, Alembakova, Smolsky, and then I'm going down the line. I don't. There's no other Belarusian guys in the top 25, but the team is I think it's Dmitry Lazowski. He's 37th right now. The team is very young because Lazowski's 23 years old. Um, yeah, I think the team is very young, and they're this is just the influence of Domracheva. Maxim Verby, he's currently ranked 56th, 26 years old. Yeah, it just goes to show you that having like a really strong influence with someone like Domracheva in your program can do wonders on your program. I mean, even look at Martin Fourcade with France. Like France was good. I mean, they have Raphael Poré, Vincent Jay was good. These guys all had influence on Fourcade, but it seems like when Fourcade became Fourcade, just the depth of the French team exploded. Like it seems like the French has always had like a good guy or a good girl, but now the French team is super solid, and their junior team is super solid, and their pipeline is becoming super solid, and biathlon in France is just exploding. And so, yeah, it's probably just the influence of having someone like that just in the lead and leading your program and building biathlon in your nation. I think this is just proof that that is almost like required if you want to become a good biathlon nation.
And I think they have Belarus has a really strong chance in the mixed relay at the Olympics with Olimbakova, Sola, and then Anton Smolsky as kind of like their three main strong contending athletes. And then whichever other guy that they choose to go with, I think he'll have to probably have a good race, but he could maybe not have a great race. And then the other three will be able to kind of pick up the slack and make some ground on the other teams. I think that'll be a really exciting race at the Olympics.
Unfortunately, there's no single mixed relay at the Olympics. I'm just looking that up right now because a Alan Bekova and Anton Smolsky single mixed, I would have to put my money on them to win.
Yeah.
That's a pretty stacked team. I mean, the only people who I think that could beat them is maybe like Roisland and Johannes Tingus Bo, but obviously Johannes hasn't been absurdly competitive this year. Maybe Sebastian Samuelson and Elvira Oiberg or Hanna Oiberg. Maybe, honestly, like even though Julia Simone is pretty far down, I think Julia Simone and Quentin Fillon-Maillet would be an unstoppable single mixed relay. Obviously, Ader and Lisa Hauser, they're solid. Dang, the Olympics really have to have the single mix because I mean, it's also an awesome TV event. It's short, it's fast, it's a lot of shooting. Dang, I think whoever set this Olympic schedule is missing out because that would have been an awesome event.
Yeah, I mean, if there was a single mixed relay, I think, and Belarus happened to win, I don't think anyone would really kind of be super surprised with the names they have on the start list. But yeah, I think the next Olympics, they definitely need to put a single mixed relay in.
And they also have to do it on a day that it's not the mixed relay. And I know that part of the game is like, you have to decide, do you want to put your team in the mixed relay or the single mixed relay? And unfortunately, that kind of sucks for, I think, of a team like Estonia, because I feel like Estonia has like one pretty competitive guy and one pretty competitive girl. And obviously they're going to put them together in the single mixed relay to try to get them to have the best result they can. But basically they're just like, there's no way that their mixed relay is going to do well because you took their best athletes. Any chance they had of being competitive, you just took them out of the team. And really, by putting those two events on the same day, it really just favors Norway, France, Sweden, because there's really not another team out there that has a depth of 8 athletes. Maybe Germany, they kind of have some good guys right now, but their women are pretty far back. Like Austria too. I mean, Hauser and Ader, really good, and you put them together and hope that they do well in the single mixed. But who from Austria is gonna like? How is Austria gonna do
Mhm.
well in the mixed relay? With their two stars taking off
Mhm.
the team. I don't know. I think it would be cool to put the single mixed relay as its own separate event on its own day and let people be able to race
Mhm.
both races, because I would love to see the star power of just all your favorites lining up for the
Mhm.
single mixed with no fear of leaving your mixed relay
Mhm.
team out to dry.
Right. And then there's no like question marks on the team in terms of like, the second leg is pretty weak. Like we have to figure that out. Or, like there's no question marks. Like it's the best guy and the best woman, and they just get to go for it. And I think that'd be pretty exciting.
All right, so the Norwegians had a pretty big sit out this week. So did the French team. But the Norwegian B team, I guess you'd call them. I guess most of these guys are IBU Cup guys and girls. They actually did pretty well, aside from the little bit of the chaos in the relay. Um, they actually did all right. I mean, Alexander Phil Anderson, he was the dude who was wrapped up in all the controversy there in the relay. He held his own. How did he do in the sprint?
He was 11th in the sprint. Yeah.
That's really good. And actually, that's their. I think that's one of their either their alternates or one of their final selection spots for the Olympics. So that dude's going to China, and then then a couple of weeks prior to the Olympics, he proves that
Mm-hmm.
he's not bad.
Mm-hmm. Bjørntegard finished 15th, who's been on and off the World Cup in previous years. And that was kind of cool to see him back and towards the top of the results.
Yeah, yeah. It just, I mean, we talked about this a little bit last week, but it's just crazy to see the depth of the Norwegian team. Just like, literally their entire A team is like, nah, we're gonna go train, and the IBU Cup team comes up and just kicks butt. Carolina Noten, 12th, shooting clean. That would have been a great individual race. Caroline Erdal, shooting clean, 15th place. Eckhoff came back. She didn't race the pursuit, so I think, I don't know. It's just kind of weird. Like, if you're there, race, or if you're not gonna race, go do like a sprint time trial somewhere else, and maybe let someone else have that start
Yeah.
spot. You know what I mean? To see what
Yeah.
happens.
It sucks that she's sitting out the pursuits. I mean, she was 19th in the sprint. And I feel like if you're 19th, you could have a pretty solid day. And you got plenty of spaces to move up, have a good race. But I guess deciding not to race is maybe what she thinks is best or what the coaches think is best. And I know that the Norwegian regulars, the Olympic team for the men, will be racing in Antolz. And I wonder if Eckhoff will participate in all the races in Antolz, but I guess we will just have to see.
Let's first talk about the men's overall, because the race, or the race for the yellow bib, which literally 2-3 weeks ago was anybody's ball game, has just become the Quinten
Mm-hmm.
Fillon-Maillet show, as the Frenchman has just dominated these last couple of weeks, and not just pulled away, but like pretty much, I don't want to say secured the secured the yellow bib, but like it's gonna take some massive a massive effort by someone to reel him back in. I mean, winning 3 races in a row in the last 3 races, that's a really good way to pull away. In the Oberhof sprint, he was not in the top 6, but still had a pretty respectable race. But then, right back onto second place in Annecy, one in Annecy, and then in fourth place in Annecy. So the dude is just like come alive. And looking at the progression chart on Real Biathlon, it's like, oh my god, he can't be caught.
Yeah, and like Jacques Allan had a pretty tough weekend in Ruhpolding with some not so great shooting in the sprint, and that kind of dropped kind of dropped him out of the running, and Samuelson right now is second. And I don't know if I'm confident in saying that Samuelson will catch Fionn Maillet, and for Fionn Maillet to get 2 races up on all the Norwegians, I don't see any of them really catching him. So I think it'd be hard not to say Fionn Maillet will probably win the overall at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's pretty fair. I mean, like we're about 2/3 of the way through the season. The Olympics do not count for overall scoring, so there's 10 World Cups. We're through 6 of them, and like literally, Samuelson is 100 points back, and just with the way that Fionn Maillet is racing right now, he'd have to be out of the top 10 in pretty much every race for the rest of the season, and Samuelson would have to win every race for the rest of the season. So, yeah, I'm gonna just go ahead and chalk this one up to Quentin Fionn Maillet. What about the blue bib? Let's talk about the blue bib a little bit, because that one's a little bit more exciting, a little bit closer of a. Well, I guess actually, technically, that one's further. Just pulling up the points for the blue bib. That one is further apart. Yeah, Ligrid was kind of fighting Samuelson for it, but then Ligrid took Ruhpolding off. So I don't think he's going to be able to catch him. Let's go over to the women's side, which isn't much better. Roislyn is destroying everyone now, especially as she keeps winning. Elvira Oiberg, I think, is our only hope, because even though Roislyn is crushing and just absolutely pulling away from everyone, Oiberg seems to be right there with her. And if she's not winning, she's like on the podium. And if Roislyn wins, Oiberg's right there next to her in second place. So is this a battle that keeps going for the rest of the year and comes down to the wire? Or is it just going to be Marta's first, Elvira's second or third, and Marta's got it in the bag?
I think it's hard to say that Roislyn won't win it, as well as kind of like Fionn Maillet. Like, she's been consistently at the top all year. She's had the yellow bib for so long, and she, as the season's gone on, she's slowly been pulling away, because her bad races are, still in the top 10, top 5, and then Oiberg and Olimbakova have a bad race, and they're outside the top 10. And I think it'd be real tough for any of them to catch Roislyn at this point.
I think Elvira Oiberg is skiing faster. Compared to the top 10, she's skiing 1.3% faster, and Roislyn is only skiing 0.3%. So if it came down to a ski race, I do think Oiberg has the opportunity or has the advantage. But check this stat out. Roislyn is shooting on average 92.5% this year. 92.5%, which is insane, because that means she's almost like guaranteed to shoot 90, or she's guaranteed to shoot like 9 out of 10 targets in a sprint race, but also could be hitting 10 out of 10 in like every sprint race. Oiberg is shooting 85%. So, that's at least, one miss in a sprint, possibly 2. And she's not skiing that much faster than her, that she can come back from maybe one missed shot if it's like a head-to-head race and she can see her and hunt her down, but not in a sprint race, I don't think. So, I mean, it actually is kind of crazy to see how well Marta's shooting this year, because her career average has been like about 85%, and then suddenly out of nowhere this year, she just can't miss the target. So, I mean, we were talking last week. Is this going to be last year Terrell's ski speed was insane, and her shooting was just good enough to get her all those wins. Now we're asking if she like backed off a little bit and had better shooting percentage, could she still win? I think that's what Marta's going to be this year. I mean, she's already demonstrated it. Like, the reason she won that race or the pursuit race this weekend was because she shot clean. Like, if Elvira was able to hit one more target, probably would have been a fight to the finish, and I think Elvira probably would have got it. But yeah, because of the clean shooting, Marta was able to pull away and really had a dominant performance. So yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. I think the 92% shooting might be a little bit unsustainable for Marta, but also Marta's the golden girl. You know, she's the one who freaking crushed at the world champs a couple of years ago, and she proved that she knows how to step up in a big way. So I bet she continues her dominance through the Olympics, and then afterwards she just rides that high all the way to the yellow bib, all the way to the crystal globe. All right, spare round. Let's wrap this up. We got the last weekend of racing going into the Olympics. Who are your mass start winners, men and women?
Men and women. I think men, I'm going to go with Johannes Tingus Bo.
Ooh.
Here, hold on. Let me say my woman, and then I'll explain. Probably Roisland.
Okay.
I went with Johannes Tingus Bo because he had this weekend off from racing in the World Cup. He's already been at altitude with the rest of the Norwegian team. And if the Norwegians' plan has been to peak for the Olympics, and if that's true, I think as soon as they started the training plan and the World Cup schedule came out, I think they automatically said, we're not going to Ruhpolding, we're going to altitude and train for Antolz, be firing on all cylinders at Antolz, and then carry that into the Olympics. I think if Johannes Tingus Bo has been preparing for the Olympics all year, I think now is when we see him kind of come into his form, and I think he'll win the mass start.
I'm going to agree with you 100%, except I'm going to go with Tarjei Bo for the win, because I think Tarjei, something about his shooting just I feel way more confident in. I'm still a little I agree with the training and the peaking for the Olympics, but that shouldn't have anything to do with the shooting. Like, you don't peak for shooting, it's you hit the target or you don't. So I feel a little bit more confident in Tarjei's shooting, but I agree with the training philosophy, and I think Tarjei is going to come back after a little bit of high altitude prep to win the mass start. And then on the women's side, I'm actually going to go with Alambekova because I don't think she's won a race yet this year, and I think it would be fitting to win the last race of the year going into the Olympics. So yeah, she's only won one race, and that was last year. So yeah, I'm going to go with Alambekova for the win in the mass start. But all right, everybody, what do you think? Leave your predictions in the comments down below, wherever you're watching this or listening to this podcast. Yeah, we really appreciate you. You can check us out, listen to us in the car or while you're doing work on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast. Check out the podcast website to leave us a voice message. And until next time, we'll see you.